The seventh episode of Andor Season 1 is titled Announcement. The episode begins with Cyril Karn preparing for a job interview arranged by his influential uncle, Harlow. Still fixated on the Aldhani heist and Cassian Andor's disappearance, Cyril tells his recruiter that he's determined to catch the murderer of the two corpos and clear his name. Despite his ambitions, Cyril is assigned to a dull, menial job related to fuel, leaving him frustrated. Meanwhile, Dedra Meero of the Imperial Security Bureau selects her uniform for an important meeting, highlighting the Empire's rigid formality. During the ISB meeting, Admiral Yularen announces the Empire's severe response to the Aldhani heist. He reveals a new directive that permanently revokes Imperial tolerance and imposes harsher penalties for any perceived anti-Imperial actions. Despite this, Dedra Meero remains unimpressed, suspecting that this heavy-handed reaction is precisely what the rebellion wanted. However, she is granted expanded jurisdiction to investigate thefts of Imperial equipment. On Coruscant, Senator Mon Mothma visits Luthen's shop and confronts him about his role in the Aldhani heist. Luthen admits that he orchestrated the plan, explaining that it was necessary to fund the rebellion, even if it meant casualties, as they needed to secure as many credits as possible. Mon Mothma is disturbed by the violent methods used. Later, Mon Mothma returns home, where she and her husband, Perrin, are hosting a party. At the event, she meets her old friend Tay Kolma, a banker. She confides in him that she is constantly being watched, and that her opposition to the Empire's overreach has made her a target, seen as troublesome or an irritation. Without revealing the full details, she asks Tay to help move money for her, since she no longer has unrestricted access to her family's wealth. She also emphasizes that Perrin is unaware of this and asks Tay to keep it a secret. Meanwhile, on Ferrix, Cassian returns to check on Marva. He informs her that he has secured enough money for them to escape the planet and flee from the Empire's reach. However, Marva refuses to leave. Despite Cassian's strong desire to protect her, Marva is determined to stay and fight against the Empire's occupation of Ferrix. She explains that the Aldhani heist has inspired others to resist, and she now feels empowered to take action herself. Marva poignantly tells Cassian, "You can't stay, and I can't go." In a bittersweet moment, Cassian says goodbye to Marva and Bee, promising her that he will return. Before leaving, Cassian says goodbye to Bix. He asks her for the name of the buyer, referring to Luthen, but Bix insists she doesn't know his identity. Cassian then instructs her to let Luthen know that he has fulfilled his part of their deal, and that Luthen should now forget about him. Meanwhile, on the planet Niamos, Vel and Clea, Luthen's assistant, discuss the Aldhani mission. Clea orders Vel to kill Cassian, fearing that he might betray the rebellion, but Vel remains conflicted about carrying out the order. The episode also highlights the far-reaching consequences of the Aldhani heist. The Empire is cracking down hard, revoking freedoms and imposing harsh punishments in response to the humiliating theft. At an ISB meeting, where senior-ranking officials are present, Major Partagaz announces that the Emperor has given the ISB more authority than ever before, and basically, they can do so as they want now. At the meeting, Blevin, in an attempt to undermine and humiliate Dedra Meero, announces that Dedra has committed executive overreach by obtaining files on the Ferrix incident without even filing for a request. Dedra retaliates by saying that she just used the new act that had been enforced to her advantage. She says that she now has hard, undeniable proof that very expensive parts of naval ships and starships have been stolen for quite some time. Major Partagaz praises her work and hands over Ferrix's sector command to Dedra. She is empowered to aggressively investigate rebel activity as the ISB tightens its grip. The ISB's harsh new policies and Dedra's expanded authority all demonstrate the Empire's tightening control in response to the Aldhani heist. The rebellion seems to be growing, but so is the Empire's relentless pursuit. Meanwhile, Cassian travels to a tropical planet where he wakes up next to a girl. As he steps out to do some shopping, he is stopped by a shore trooper patrol. Despite repeatedly insisting that he's just a tourist and has done nothing wrong, He is unjustly detained and sentenced to 6 years in an Imperial prison. This concludes the 7th episode of Andor Season 1. The 8th episode of Andor Season 1 is titled Narkina 5. The episode opens with Cassian Andor being transported to a remote prison facility on the planet Narkina 5 after being arrested for his involvement in the heist on Aldhani. Despite his protests that he is just a tourist, Cassian is sentenced to 6 years of hard labor for his crimes against the Empire. Meanwhile, on the galactic capital of Coruscant, the ISB officer Dedra Meero is determined to track down the mysterious Axis figure behind the recent rebel activities. She tracks down Cyril Karn, who supposedly has a personal vendetta against Cassian, as he wants to catch him and clear his name in the process. Dedra tells Karn to help her fill the gaps in the story. Cyril tells her that he hasn't even read the report of the Ferrix incident and that he was forced to sign the report without even reading it. It is also revealed that Karn has been filing false reports in an attempt to locate Cassian. Dedra gives him the report to read and asks him how to locate Cassian. Karn isn't much help, but he says that he was a good inspector, as he was able to solve the crime and locate Cassian within 2 days. Karn tries to convince Dedra that he would be a valuable asset in tracking down Cassian if she lets him join her team. However, Dedra remains unimpressed and dismisses his offer, though she does take note of his persistence. As Cassian arrives at the Narkina 5 prison, he is processed and assigned to a work detail, where he is forced to participate in a highly controlled and oppressive system of labor. The prisoners are divided into teams and pitted against each other, with productivity and evaluation being constant evaluation concerns. Cassian observes the harsh conditions and brutal treatment of the inmates, including the swift punishment of inmates in case their productivity levels go down. Afterward, Cassian notices 2 prisoners from different work teams communicating with each other across the vast facility using a complex system of hand signals, hinting at the possibility of resistance and escape. On Coruscant, Dedra Meero continues her investigation into the rebel activities. Dedra presents her findings in a meeting with her superiors, in which Colonel Yularen is also present. She tells them that there was a man alongside Cassian on Ferrix that day. She presents evidence of coordinated attacks and the involvement of the man who was with Cassian, whom she dubs Axis. Although Yularen appears unimpressed and dismissive of her concerns, Dedra remains determined to uncover the truth and dismantle the growing rebel network. Meanwhile, on Ferrix, Marva's health keeps declining rapidly as she grows increasingly ill and despondent. Bix, who's worried by this and scared by the fact that Marva might not live long, decides to reach out to Luthen in an attempt to locate Cassian, unaware that he is already in Imperial custody. Luthen's assistant, Clea, remains cautious of the fact that it might be the ISB on the other side. She convinces Luthen not to respond to Bix, fearing that it may compromise their own position and the larger rebel cause. Elsewhere, Luthen travels to the remote system of Segra Milo to meet with the extremist rebel leader Saw Gerrera, played by Forrest Whitaker, reprising his role from Rogue One. Luthen tries to convince Gerrera to work with other rebel factions, but Gerrera remains steadfast in his belief that he is the only one with a clear vision for the fight against the Empire. Luthen offers Gerrera a significant set of parts, but only if he agrees to work with another rebel group led by Anto Krieger to attack an Imperial station. Gerrera is reluctant, but Luthen insists that they cannot win this fight alone and must work together. The episode then returns to the Narkina 5 prison, where Cassian has settled into his new routine, with the passage of time marked by the changing of shifts rather than days. He continues to observe the harsh realities of the prison system, including the constant threat of punishment and the way the inmates are pitted against each other in a never-ending cycle of competition and productivity. Meanwhile, on Ferrix, as Bix returns from her attempt to contact Luthen, she discovers that one of her associates has been captured by the ISB. Soon after, Bix is spotted and starts to run. A stormtrooper shouts, "Get her!" and the troopers chase after her, eventually capturing and detaining her. She is taken to the local Imperial base, where Dedra Miro is waiting. Dedra leads Bix into an interrogation room, revealing her associate, who has just been tortured. Pointing to the same chair, Dedra makes it clear that she intends to use any means necessary to extract information from Bix about Cassian's whereabouts and the Rebel network. This concludes the 8th episode of Andor Season 1. The 9th episode of Andor Season 1 is titled Nobody's Listening. The episode begins on the prison planet of Narkina 5. Cassian Andor remains incarcerated, determined to find a way to escape. He tries to convince the prison foreman, Kino Loy, to help orchestrate an escape plan, but Kino is focused solely on completing his remaining 217 shifts and securing his release. Cassian argues that the Empire views them as expendable, cheaper than droids, and easier to replace, but Kino refuses to jeopardize his chance at freedom. Meanwhile, Bix Caleen is being interrogated by the ruthless Dedra Miro on Ferrix. Dedra introduces her to Dr. Gorst, a doctor who specializes in torture techniques and extracting information from prisoners. Dedra tells Bix that she doesn't have to go through all of this, and if she can just tell him whatever she knows about Cassian and Axis, she'll let her go. On Bix's refusal, Dr. Gorst employs a combination of psychological manipulation and physical torture to extract information about Cassian's whereabouts and his involvement with the recent rebel attack on Aldhani. Bix, weakened and in pain, eventually reveals to Dedra that Cassian had recently returned to Ferrix, clean-shaven and flush with credits, matching the description of the rebels who carried out the Aldhani heist. Dedra then informs the local Imperial commander on Ferrix to treat Bix as a witness rather than a hostage, and gives him permission to publicly execute Pak, Bix's known associate, as a warning to the citizens. This brutal display of the Empire's power is intended to strike fear into the hearts of the rebels and, by extension, the general public as well. On Coruscant, Senator Mon Mothma attempts to sway the Imperial Senate to oppose the Emperor's Public Order Resentencing Directive, the harsh new security measure that has been enacted by the Empire in the wake of the Aldhani heist. However, her impassioned pleas fall on deaf ears as her fellow senators choose to ignore the Empire's overreach, more concerned with protecting their own interests than defending the freedoms of the people they represent. Defeated, Mon Mothma returns to her car, where her driver tells her that her cousin has arrived. It is revealed that the senator's cousin is none other than Vel herself. Vel and Mon Mothma have a tense discussion about the rebellion's use of violent tactics against the Empire. Vel defends these actions as necessary to combat the Empire's darkness. However, Mon Mothma expresses doubts about the rebel effort and asks Vel to act like a spoiled rich girl for a while before she leaves. Meanwhile, Mon Mothma's efforts to secure funds for the rebellion hit a roadblock when her banker friend, Tay Kolma, informs her that they'll need to enlist the help of Davos Gulden, a well-known thug and shady businessman. At the ISB headquarters, Dedra Miro delivers a report connecting Cassian Andor to the Aldhani heist, further strengthening the Empire's case against him. A report comes in that they've caught a rebel pilot. During interrogation, the pilot reveals that Anton Krieger and his rebel forces are planning to attack another Imperial base soon. Dedra and Major Partagaz decide to devise a plan to set a trap for the rebel leader Anton Krieger, whom Luthen had been trying to recruit by using the pilot as bait. The next morning, outside the ISB building, Dedra encounters the former security officer Cyril Karn, who has become obsessed with her and her work. Cyril professes his admiration for Dedra's ruthless methods, but she firmly rejects his advances and threatens to have him arrested if he continues to stalk her. In Narkina 5, tensions are rising as the prisoners, led by Cassian, begin to suspect that something is amiss on the lower levels. A rumor comes in that the prison guards have killed all the prisoners on level 2, which startles Cassian and his fellow inmates. Melshi, another prisoner, ominously remarks that the Empire could keep them in prison forever after this, and no one would even know. This statement sets off Kino Loy, who is clinging to the promise of his freedom and sees any disruption as a threat to his plans. Meanwhile, an old inmate, Olaf, who was on Cassian's station, suffers a stroke. Cassian and the others quickly call for a medic. The doctor tells them that Olaf has suffered a stroke, and he doesn't have long remaining. He gives him an injection, which enables Olaf to have a peaceful death. As the doctor is treating Olaf, Cassian continuously probes the medic to tell him about what happened on level 2. The doctor eventually gives in to Cassian's relentlessness and tells Cassian and Kino that they massacred everyone on level 2, and they'll probably never let anyone out of the prison. Throughout the episode, Cassian repeatedly asks Kino how many guards are on each level, but Kino consistently refuses to answer. Despite this, the question weighs heavily on Kino. As they head back to their workroom, Cassian asks him once more. This time, Kino finally responds, "Never more than 12. This concludes the 9th episode of Andor Season 1.